The New York Knicks have a very bright future ahead of themselves. Although this previous season was a disappointment overall, it wasn't a complete disappointment, and the Knicks still did show a bunch of different positives, specifically in their young talent. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. The New York Knicks have had a very difficult past. From missing the playoffs in 8 consecutive seasons, to picking the wrong players in free agency and signing players to terrible contracts, to getting unlucky in the NBA draft lottery and never moving up but only moving down, to just picking the wrong players in general in the draft, the Knicks have certainly not been good for a very long time. But things finally started to turn around at least a little bit when the Knicks signed Leon Rose as their president of basketball operations. And just a season after taking over, he took the Knicks to their first playoff appearance in 8 seasons. But not only did the Knicks make the playoffs, but it was a little bit different this time. Typically in the past, whenever the Knicks were to make the playoffs, they were a 7th, 8th, or maybe even 6th seed if they were lucky. But the issue with that is they were only made up of older guys, which would mean they wouldn't be able to get better as the seasons progress, and overall it just wouldn't be sustainable. But the difference with the Knicks this previous season when they did make the playoffs is they were totally made up of young guys. When you talk about Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin, Julius Randle was still relatively young. They just had a very nice young team overall. And I think the fact that their homegrown players were finally starting to play well was just extremely exciting for a ton of Knicks fans. Because obviously it's nice to bring in some players in free agency that will help you win an NBA championship, but for any organization and for any fan base, nothing's the same as homegrown talent. Whenever you draft a player and they turn out to be a superstar, there's nothing better than that. But after all the joy and happiness for all the Knicks fans after finally making it to the playoffs, once it actually came down to the playoffs, the Knicks obviously failed, losing in 5 games to the Atlanta Hawks. And although that was certainly very disappointing, it seemed like the Knicks knew what their flaw was, and that was their offense. So in free agency, they ended up going out and signing Kemba Walker as well as Evan Fournier to bolster their offensive woes. And early on into this season, it was pretty apparent that that was not the right decision, as both Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, to a lesser extent, were struggling. And overall, at this point, as the season did end obviously, it's pretty clear that this season for the Knicks was a disappointment in the sense of their overall team play, and the fact that not only did they not make the playoffs this season, they also of course did not improve off the season they had last year. But the reason why I'm making this video is I still do think the Knicks' future is very bright, and I think this for a few different reasons. The first and most obvious reason is RJ Barrett. So when RJ was originally drafted to the Knicks, the expectation for him was he was going to be the franchise guy for the Knicks, and although in his rookie season he didn't necessarily play the best, and a lot of NBA fans were starting to get worried about him and thinking that he could potentially be a draft bust, although it was very early on into his rookie season, ever since his rookie year, he's been nothing short of fantastic. In his second season, he really improved his game across the board, specifically adding that catch and shoot 3-point jump shot within his game that really opened up everything else within his game. But when you look at the numbers in his second season compared to his first, you see his numbers jump across the board. In his third season, which was this year, he didn't necessarily have the best start to the year, but after that somewhat rough start to the beginning of the season, RJ has been phenomenal, improving once again across the board, and you could see that in his statistics. And basically when you see a young player like RJ Barrett that continues to improve his game each and every season, that's exactly what you want to see. And typically when you do see that, you're talking about an all-star type guy and maybe even a superstar type guy. Now obviously RJ is nowhere near that superstar level, at least at this point. I do think that he will make the all-star team next season, and that certainly is my expectation. And of course, even besides next season, I would expect RJ to improve his game each and every season like he has been doing so far. But the next reason why I'm excited about the Knicks' future is the play of some of the other Knicks young players. And I'm talking about guys like Obi Toppin and Emmanuel Quickley specifically, but also other young players like Mitchell Robinson, Cam Reddish even, Jericho Sims, Miles McBride. Overall, there's just a bunch of different young players on this Knicks team that have been playing extremely well in this previous season. But I just want to go a little deeper on both Emmanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin, because because although some of the other young players in this video that I did mention, I do think they're going to be good players going forward. Specifically talking about Obi and IQ, I think those two guys are going to be legitimate parts of the Knicks future for a long time. Because at the beginning of the season for both of these guys, both IQ and Obi, they had relatively poor starts to the season, but around the midway point of the season, and especially towards the tail end, the last 15 games or so, for both of these guys, they're playing phenomenal basketball. For Obi Toppin, he had multiple 40-point games on efficient shooting numbers. For Emmanuel quickly, he had multiple triple-doubles while also putting up very efficient scoring nights as well. And I just think both of these guys have a very bright future ahead of themselves on this New York Knicks roster. Now, one thing that I do want to mention on the Obi front is if Obi's going to be the starting power forward for the Knicks going forward, the Knicks are going to have to figure out a way to trade away Julius Randle, which I personally think they should do anyway, but of course, based upon how Obi has been playing as of late, I really think it's the right move for the Knicks. Now, at this point, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to trade away Julius, or at least get a good return for him, but in my opinion, I think you just got to do what you got to do and trade him away at this point, even if you don't get all that much in return. But I'm not necessarily saying that Julius Randle is a terrible player and nobody in the NBA should want him. The only reason why I'm saying that the Knicks specifically should look to trade him away is because in my opinion, at this point, the experiment between him and RJ Barrett has really not worked out, and it's pretty clear that RJ Barrett is the franchise guy for you. And also on top of that, when you have other young players like Obi Toppin who are playing extremely well and are looking to get that starting role, I just think it makes a ton of sense to trade away Julius Randle for the Knicks specifically. Not saying that he can't thrive in another situation, I just think it's the right move for the Knicks at this point. Now, another reason for why I'm very excited about the Knicks and why I'm so confident in them going forward is Leon Rose. Now, of course, in his first full season with the Knicks, he did take them to the playoffs for the first time in 8 seasons, which was very impressive and certainly did give a ton of excitement to Knicks fans. But obviously, in his second full season, which was this year, the Knicks were a pretty big disappointment, missing the playoffs. But even with that being said, I still am very confident in Leon going forward due to one main reason. And that one main reason is the fact that he was able to draft effectively ever since he's gotten here. And I mentioned this in a lot of my videos, but whenever you talk about successful president of basketball operations or successful general managers, the most important thing that they can do is draft effectively. And although it has been a small sample size, as I mentioned, Leon has proven the ability to draft effectively so far, which is something that I'm very excited about going forward. Now, one fair criticism about Leon is how he's been handling free agency, and although he hasn't necessarily made catastrophic mistakes, he at the same time hasn't necessarily been all that effective, I would say, in free agency, so I would like to see him improve upon that as the seasons progress. But something that we all have to realize is he is very new to this, as the Knicks are the first time he has been in this role, and he was an agent for all these years, so that's why I'm giving him a little bit of time on the free agency front. But nonetheless, I still am very, very confident in Leon's abilities. But anyways, we'll see what happens with the Knicks as time does progress, but of course I am very confident in them going forward. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Knicks will have a bright future going forward, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.